Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name is Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in today on a Friday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How are you doing today on this Friday?
I'm always happy on a Friday. Lots of action in the NFL this week. Wow. Lots of people moving around. Lots of free agent signings. Breaking news right now. I turn it back to you.
Indeed. We're going to jump right into the breaking news, which is Cooper Kupp is signing a contract with the Seattle Seahawks. The exact details aren't out yet, but according to Ian Rappaport, Cooper Kupp to the Seahawks is expected to be at least $15 million per year or more. He joins the Seahawks with wide receivers like JSN, a big favorite of mine coming out of that draft, as well as Marquez Valdez-Scantling, along with Jake Bobo. They needed some talent, and they finally got it with at the hands of Cooper Kupp. He did not want this to drag out a long process of trying to find a team. He wanted to get this done quickly, and he did with signing a deal with the Seattle Seahawks. So I just want to get your reaction. What do you think of Sam Darnold now throwing it to Cooper Kupp after the Rams decided to let him go?
It's certainly an upgrade over what they had before Darnold got there. Metcalf is gone. He was traded to the Steelers. I think that Kupp to the Seahawks is a nice move for them. Darnold will benefit from it. I do think that the receiver core is still questionable a little bit because Kupp is going to be the number one. Nobody else there really you could call close to a one. So he's going to have a lot of double coverage, I think. I'm sure the Rams are unhappy that he winds up staying in the division.
They'll play him twice now.
Yeah, and I think that he's going to have it. He's going to be, he's going to be pumped for those games, and that's going to make it that much tougher on the Rams.
Well, I don't know how much of an impact this will actually have because Cooper Kupp's production has diminished year after year after year, and especially with Puka Nacua coming in with the Rams, we really saw a difference between how effective he could be with just Puka Nacua instead of Cooper Kupp, and when they were banged up, really, I would say that Puka Nacua truly became the number one wide receiver in very short order. Because Nakua's rookie year, he exploded onto the scene. Now, he also, I believe, led the league in drops, but it didn't matter because he was such an explosive player that Cooper Kupp kind of got left in the background. Warren Sharp came out with some incredible numbers here per ESPN's player tracking data. Cooper Kupp's ability to get open has decreased year after year after year. So in 2021, when he had the Triple Crown and was the best wide receiver in the NFL, he was ranked 15th out of 160. The following year, 71st out of 150. 2023, 102 out of 153. And this past year, 141 out of 159. So he has diminished pretty drastically, going from 15th and then 3 years later going down to 141st. So it's not great, but I could also say that his production was at the hands of just the fact that Stafford kept targeting Puka Nacua, and what I might also add is the highest passer rating when targeted to on the Rams was Cooper Kupp. So take that with what you will. But the Seahawks desperately needed somebody because I don't think you're going to get anywhere with Sam Darnold as your quarterback throwing it to JSN and Jake Bobo. Yeah. That's not going to happen. You need at least one other person. But here's my concern. Again, it's kind of the same thing with a bunch of teams that get all these talented pieces with no real structure. Sam Darnold, we saw the last 2 weeks. What was his massive issue? It was pressure. The Seahawks last year had the worst pass-blocking offensive line in the NFL. So Sam Darnold does not do well while under pressure. His numbers are actually garbage. So if they could shore up the offensive line, you add a weapon like Cooper Kupp into the lineup here with JSN, who is, I would say, he's closer than what you think for being a wide receiver 1, but still, he was relegated to wide receiver 3 and then got bumped up slightly to 2 when Tyler Lockett's production declined a little bit. So maybe he could fill into that number 1 spot eventually, but you get Cooper Kupp, you get a chance to redeem himself, and he gets to play his former team who he announced, not the team, not an insider. Cooper Kupp announced during Super Bowl week that the Rams are planning on getting off him. Now he gets to play him twice. Now here's my only issue. Matt Stafford versus Sam Darnold. I don't know how favorable that matchup is in favor of the Seattle Seahawks, so I don't know if he'll get the revenge on his former team that he's looking for. Maybe. So just going to put that out. You go into the Seahawks, you get to verse your former team twice, but your former team is still very good in comparison to your own team. Yeah. Well, your offensive line needs work. Your defense needs a little bit of work. So I don't know how big of an impact this will truly have.
Well, the Seahawks are working to try to upgrade their team. They got Dexter Lawrence.
Demarcus Lawrence.
Demarcus Lawrence, yeah. And he was happy to go there. Yeah, he seemed. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, the back and forth between him and Micah Parsons. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. And we could also have some breaking news throughout the show here. We're still waiting on the Aaron Rodgers news. We're going to talk about that soon, as well as we're looking at, here we go. We got the official number. Cooper Kupp reached an agreement on 3-year, $45 million deal. So it is $15 million average annual value. There you go.
Any guaranteed money?
That has not come through yet. Adam Schefter reported a minute ago, 3 years, $45 million. Guarantees are not up yet. My guess is it'll be around the $20 to $25 million guaranteed money rate. That's what my guess would be. Wouldn't be surprised if it hits 30, 35, but there it is. Cooper Kupp, Seattle Seahawks, 3 years, $45 million deal. He teams up with Sam Darnold, who, I'm going to give him a little bit of credit, even though I bashed him last show. He did very well with a stacked team of T.J. Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, a good offensive line, Aaron Jones in the backfield, the best pressure rate defense through like 16 weeks. He did what he was supposed to do, and he had a career year.
Yeah.
Just, having
It's going to be tougher for him in Seattle.
Absolutely, 100%. All right, let's get into our official start to the show. So let's begin with this one. Russell Wilson. We've talked about him pretty extensively.
Just one more point on Kupp. I would say he was the best receiver that we knew was going to go somewhere else left. Don't you think? Who else is? There's nobody left, I think, that is up there for
the
moving.
only one that had potential was T. Higgins. But
he's not going.
Correct. Yeah. The only one that would have been available, if you want to put in Stephon Diggs into that.
Yeah, he's on one wheel. I'm not sure people are going to be that interested.
And he's coming off an injury as well. So, yeah, I would agree with you. Cooper Kupp is probably the best one.
Yeah, was left. It's
truly a free agent.
Second-tier guys from now on.
I'll give you that. Fair point.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. But yeah, let's get into our first topic of today's show. According to Jeremy Fowler, Russell Wilson left his visit with the Browns yesterday and is on his way today to visit with the New York Giants. The veteran quarterback is assessing all of his options, with the Steelers and Giants still reportedly in the mix. It looks like now the Giants are the next team up. It could be a bait for Aaron Rodgers saying, hey, we're looking at another quarterback instead of you potentially. But he did go visit the Cleveland Browns, which was, I would definitely say, a very interesting choice for Russell Wilson because they just traded for Kenny Pickett. They have Bailey Zappi, and they already have Deshaun Watson, but he re-ruptured his Achilles, or he had a setback with his Achilles, so who knows what that's going to happen next year, 2026, whatever the case may be. But it looks like the Browns could be in the market for a quarterback with Russell Wilson. So my question to you is, what do you think is the best destination? You've been a big advocate for one of these teams. What do you think is the best destination for Russell Wilson out of probably the Steelers, Browns, and Giants, who are the only supposed teams?
I'd say stay with the Steelers, right? That's best for him. I'm not sure it's best for the Steelers, but you get a second chance in the same system. I think that helps if you're in the same system for a couple of years. Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith are still going to be there. So it's a stability, and it'll be a system that Russell knows well now. Arguably, they have a better offense all around with him than the Giants or the Browns, for sure. You look at his stats from last year, is 214 or 336 passing, 63, almost 64% completion percentage, 2,482 yards because he missed the first 6 games, 16 TDs, 5 interceptions. That's a pretty good ratio. 95.6 rating. In the postseason, he looked great in the one game in terms of his stats anyway. 20 of 29, 69%, 270 yards, 2 TDs, and no interceptions, 121.3 rating. But they lost the game, and he really wasn't. These stats look better than the way he looked playing, I thought. He's a 10-time Pro Bowler, 2014 Super Bowl champ. Only competition on the Steelers is Mason Rudolph, and they doesn't look like they have Skylar Thompson as well, and they don't look like they're going to be out there drafting one of the top tier quarterbacks. I don't think. Maybe, but I doubt it. They won't have they'll be gone before they get to the Steelers pick. So I'd say that that's his best choice. The Steelers they're going to have the best wide receiver core of the 3 teams. They just signed DK Metcalf. They have Pickens and Freiermuth is their tight end, who's pretty good as well. They made the playoffs last year. That's more than you can say about the Browns and the Giants, who each only won 3 games. They have the best defense of the 3, I think. The Giants, they don't have much competition at quarterback. DeVito was on a 1-year minimum value deal. That they signed him to that. They have nobody else right now. They're going to draft a quarterback, I think, which could mean Wilson will wind up being a bridge quarterback if they start out slow and they lose a lot of games. Fans will be screaming for either Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward to get into the game. Their offensive line continues to be a huge question mark for the Giants. They really have only one star on offense. That's Malik Neighbors. Tyrone Tracy is a serviceable running back and looked pretty good last year, but is he a superstar? I don't think so. Defense likely won't be as good as the Pittsburghs, I don't think. Even though they have some big names up front there, they haven't really performed all that well. If he winds up being a bridge, how does he feel about being a mentor to either Ward or Sanders? I don't think he'd like that so well. I think his biggest competition for going back to Pittsburgh is Aaron Rodgers. Maybe Pittsburgh... Maybe for Pittsburgh job is the Giants are in the mix for him as well. So I don't know. We're waiting to see where Aaron Rodgers goes. It'd be fun if it happened during the show here. We could talk a little bit about that. The Browns, he left without a deal. He had a meeting with them. A Watson deal has been a disaster. He's still owed $92 million, which is guaranteed, all of it, every penny. The Browns have gone 9-10. With him at quarterback starting. And he's probably lost for the 2025 season, as you say, after he re-injured his Achilles. They traded for a backup quarterback, Kenny Pickett. I think most people think of him as a backup rather than a starter, but he says, bring on anybody. I'm anxious to compete for the starting job. Wilson has experience playing in the division, so I can see why the Browns would look at him. There isn't much left for the Browns. I mean, it's really Aaron Rodgers and Wilson, the only 2 quarterbacks out there, are waiting to see where they land. The danger, I think, is that same as like the Giants, as he could wind up being a bridge quarterback to either Ward or Sanders again, because the Browns are probably going to draft a quarterback. Wide receiver core, Judy, Tillman, Juki.
And Joku.
Is not. I don't think it's in the same league as Pittsburgh's now that they got Metcalf. The defense could be good with Garrett staying. Garrett thinks Russ would be a good fit. He joined management and the sales pitch to Russ, and he wants to help the Browns recruit free agents. So I think that Wilson, I think there's a very good chance he winds up back with Pittsburgh because Metcalf's best years were with Russell Wilson. His best year was with Russell Wilson passing it to him. I think that makes the most sense. Even though I don't think they can get to the Super Bowl with Russell Wilson as a quarterback. Maybe with the upgrades on offense now and Metcalf there, they could win a playoff game. That should be their immediate goal. They haven't won a playoff game in their last 6 tries, and that's a record of the NFL for losses in the first round. So they got to do something about that. Maybe Metcalf and a few other tweaks will get them at least beyond that, but I don't think they get to the Super Bowl with Russell Wilson.
I don't think that Russell Wilson's going to go to Pittsburgh. I don't think Pittsburgh wants Russ back because why haven't they made him an offer yet? If they wanted him back, why not make him an offer? I know they're focusing on Aaron Rodgers. They also focused on Justin Fields. They gave Justin Fields an offer, but he turned it down because it was $10 million less than what he got from the Jets. So I think that if they actually wanted Russ, they would at least give him an offer. Maybe lowball him, see where he's at. But instead, you didn't even offer him anything reportedly. So I think they're done with Russ, and I think honestly they should be because in the last 5 games, including the wild card, his offense, the one that he led, averaged 14.2 points a game. His defense, that Pittsburgh Steelers defense, it always hits a wall because through however long, usually it's 3/4 of the season, maybe half a season, depending on how much they truly need to be dependent on. Well, it was about halfway through, a little bit beyond halfway through this past year. The last 5 games of the season, they gave up an average of 30.4 points per game. So their defense fell apart because their offense was averaging 14 points, getting off the field in rapid succession, and they were right back on the field like they were just basically playing drive after drive after drive with no offensive break in between. So I don't think Russell Wilson, honestly, should go back to the Steelers. I really don't think the Steelers even want him. I think that his only shot is truly the New York Giants or the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have the number 2 overall pick, so they could draft either Shador or Cam, whichever quarterback the Titans, if they do draft one, whichever quarterback they don't take. The Giants are currently also with Rodgers and reportedly gave him an offer as well. So they're much more interested in Aaron Rodgers than they are Russ, and I think that the Giants are playing the same game the Steelers did with Russell Wilson. I think that the Giants gave Aaron Rodgers an offer and are just bringing Russ in to be like, Rodgers, hey, we might sign a quarterback and we may leave you in the dust. I think that very well could be in play here. And also, the Steelers just signed Mason Rudolph back to their roster. So they're looking for a true QB1. They're not looking for a guy to come in as a potential backup and do the same thing they did this prior year. So I think his only shot is probably the New York Giants. And reportedly, the Giants gave Aaron Rodgers more money than the Pittsburgh Steelers did. So depending on where Rodgers wants to go, what he values the most, the familiarity of New York, which he's been there the past 2 years, where he doesn't need to play in a different stadium, he doesn't even need to move, and you also get more money, that could be a very enticing option. Or you can go to Pittsburgh, have a better roster, maybe have better success long-term, but take less money and you have to move again. Whatever Rodgers wants to do, it's in his court right now, or maybe it's not, depending on what another team does, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But I don't think it really matters. I think Russ is cooked. I think Russ has been cooked. He put up a mediocre year on a decent team. He didn't put up gaudy numbers. He didn't put up numbers that make sure that he's a starter in the NFL. And all this Hall of Famer talk, I've been on this now for 3 years. Russell Wilson is not a Hall of Famer. Why would he be in the Hall of Fame?
He won a Super Bowl.
So? Trent Dilfer has a Super Bowl. Nick Foles has a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco has a Super Bowl.
10-time All-Pro.
He's not a 10-time All-Pro. That would make him, I think, have the most All-Pros by a quarterback in NFL history.
A 10-time Pro Bowler.
That doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. By the way, he has 0 All-Pros.
Yeah. Well, you asked me.
So he's not. By the way, All-Pro means an All-Pro first team or second team. He made All-Pro second team once in his career. So that means he was a top 2 quarterback once. Yeah. But he was never the best in his own conference.
Okay. Well, you asked me
he also has never had an MVP
what's the best destination for him? Well, for him, it would be Pittsburgh. That's where he'd prefer to be.
They don't want him.
Well, it's not over yet. Pittsburgh has. If the Giants sign Aaron Rodgers, then what's Pittsburgh going to do? Go with Mason Rudolph?
It would not surprise me if they stick with Mason Rudolph. Because
he actually played well with them when he got started. He won his games.
3-0. 3-0.
Lost the playoff game.
Lost to the Bills in the playoff game, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
At least you got them to the playoffs.
Yeah,
you helped them get to the playoffs. Yeah. So, for me, I don't care where he goes, to be honest with you. Just to answer the question, his best one based on, let's break it down. Where a team doesn't hate you, that's the New York Giants or the Cleveland Browns. If you want to go back to just familiarity, even though the team might hate you, and they may be just saying, well, we have to sign you because there's no other option left for us, well, then you can go to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But if you're talking about a place to actually succeed, it's neither of these teams. It's none of them.
Yeah.
Because none of them are set up for current success. The Pittsburgh Steelers are on a rinse and repeat of having a winning record, losing in the wild card.
You don't think DK Metcalf makes a difference for them?
No.
Really?
They don't have a great offensive line. They got rid of their number 1 running back. Their defense will hit a wall.
I don't know. I think
it's been a rinse and repeat thing since Big Ben left.
They've never. When's the last time they had a number 1 wide receiver? A really
define number 1.
Justin Jefferson type.
Well, that's
receiver.
Antonio Brown and then Juju Smith-Schuster for a year or 2.
Okay, but Antonio Brown is a long time ago now.
If we're talking about just a solid number 1,
look how good they were when they had Antonio Brown. They were very good.
Correct, but they also had an insane defense.
Yeah, well, they're going to try to strengthen their defense.
And they also had a competent quarterback, and also had forget it. Le'Veon Bell before he decided to revolt against the team.
It'll be interesting to see what Aaron Rodgers.
Stable offensive line.
Aaron Rodgers has a bigger offer from the Giants than he would get from Pittsburgh. He'd be smarter to take less money and go to Pittsburgh. I think. I mean, he's going to be on his rear end a lot in New York because it's the Giants' offensive line, huge question mark, and is not going to be great for sure. I think he's got tons of money already. Why does he need more money? He wants wins, and he wants to, polish up his image and his career after the last few seasons here. So he'd be smarter to go. If he had the chance to go to Pittsburgh, he should go there.
I'm not sure because we have to realize that last year, right, because you're saying the Pittsburgh Steelers, they apparently, because the Giants would be on his butt too much. Well, guess what? The Pittsburgh Steelers did not have a good offensive line last year. They were ranked 26th in pass blocking. They gave up a bunch of pressures. They also gave up a bunch of hurries as well. So they were not a good offensive line last year.
It's good. And the Giants. What were the Giants ranked?
The Giants, they lost the number one piece of their offensive line.
Yeah, well.
They were a top offensive line within the first 6 weeks. Then week 7, when Andrew Thomas went down, they became the worst pass-blocking offensive line in the NFL.
There you go.
But Andrew Thomas is coming back.
Okay.
The Steelers had they had a couple pieces missing. I know someone wanted people, be pinpointing, oh, you're wrong about this 1 week in week 11. Some guy went down in the second quarter, the third minute, whatever. The Steelers' offensive line was relatively healthy the entire year, and they had a more mobile quarterback, and were just a slightly better offensive line. Now Rodgers is immobile, going to a bad offensive line. At least Russ could move a tiny bit. I don't love his movement, but he can move a tiny bit.
Yeah.
I think that regardless of what happens, Russell Wilson is not going to raise a team to be a deep playoff contending team. That he's definitely not a Super Bowl quarterback anymore. And for those people who are saying he's a Hall of Famer, he's not.
So you predict he'll be with the Browns then?
No, I mean, it's either Browns or Giants.
I don't think it's the Giants. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is the Giants.
Well, you just said he might go to the Steelers, and all reports are saying the Steelers.
I think
or now the Vikings.
They have to take less money.
So?
Based
on what you're saying,
he should do it.
Right.
If he could, he should do it. But I think it's probably going to be the Giants.
That'd be interesting. I already talked about it. I don't think Rodgers going to the Giants makes any sense.
Yeah.
Bad offensive line, one
where
true
do you think
weapon,
he should
poor
be,
running
then?
game.
Where
Russell
do you think
Wilson?
he should? No, Aaron Rodgers.
Well, we're going to talk about that later on in the show. I think it's going to be interesting because a brand new team is in the mix now. But for Russ, the Steelers gave up on him. Think about this. The Broncos took an $86 million dead cap hit for him not to play with you. Not to play with you.
Yeah.
So they were willing to do that, and now the Steelers, after 1 year with Russ, are giving up on him.
Mm-hmm.
That's the third team to not want Russ anymore. The Seahawks shipped him out. The Broncos kicked him out. The Steelers are leaving him on the curb. So what does that say about Russ? Rodgers, even though we've heard a bunch of toxic moments and 90% retired and darkness retreats and all of this, he still is. He still is wanted. Daniel Jones is more wanted than Russ. He signed a deal with Indianapolis.
No, I think Russ would want more than $14 million 1 year.
Who's going to give it to him?
That's what he wants.
Justin Fields is more sought after than Russ, and he barely played.
Yeah. Well, he played
Russ
6 games.
Noted. I said this. It's not a blip. This is a nice trend off a cliff. Nice trend. It went from being a very good quarterback, top 10-ish quarterback, fringe top 10 quarterback, to now being an average to very below average quarterback who really at times is more of a detriment to your team than a beneficial part of it. Russ is not good anymore. We got to give up this big spiel about Russ, coming back and being great. Because he'll have his moments. But when you need him, he'll come up small. Last 5 games, average 14 points on offense. Not good whatsoever. Let's get into our next topic here, which is Geno Smith. Now, this news broke late last week, but we decided to get into it. Geno Smith was traded from the Seattle Seahawks, and he's going to reunite with Pete Carroll, who's the former head coach of the Seattle Seahawks, and he got traded for a 3rd-round pick. The value, I think, is pretty decent. Geno Smith now joins Tom Brady as a minority owner, Spytek as the GM, Pete Carroll as the head coach, a running game that just got Raheem Mostert, Brock Bowers, who's the best tight end in the NFL right now, in my opinion, and Jacoby Myers as his number 1 wide receiver currently. And a defense that just gave Max Crosby for about a half second the highest paid non-quarterback contract in the NFL. So my question to you is, what do you expect from the Las Vegas Raiders for 2025 with Geno Smith as the QB1?
Well, I think that Pete Carroll for sure doesn't want the first year to be a rebuilding year. I mean, he's going to be 74 years old. He wants to win now. He wants to get going and get on a roll as soon as possible. And he had some pretty good success with Geno Smith as his quarterback when he was in Seattle. He got him for a third-round pick, which I thought was pretty good. He's making $25 million in his first year, but I think they're probably going to try to do a new contract with him. He's a two-time Pro Bowler. Under Carroll, he passed for 8,641 yards in 2 years. That's averaging more than 4,000 per year. 55 TDs and 21 interceptions in 37 games. So those are pretty good stats. I think the Raiders evaluated every quarterback option, but the key was finding someone who could help them be competitive in 2025. They tried to get Matthew Stafford, who went back to the Rams. The Seahawks will save $31 million in cash and cap space while taking on about $13.5 million of dead money. The Seahawks picked up Darnold, as we talked about our last show, and free agency. I think the big questions here are how will Smith fit into the offense that Chip Kelly is building. The Raiders finished 29th in points per game at 18.2 in 2024. Smith and Kelly should improve on that in 2025 for sure. Smith threw for more than 4,000 yards in 2 out of his 3 past seasons with the Seahawks. Brock Bowers, one of the top pass catchers last year, despite spotty play from Minshew and O'Connell. I think he'll only benefit from having Geno Smith there. Kelly's known for running up up-tempo offenses, but changed his approach a little bit to help Ohio State win the national title. They need to develop a creative run game, something they haven't had, that balances the offense and provides less pressure on the quarterbacks. That's something that's going to be key. What other needs remain for another question mark, what other needs remain for the Raiders to be viable contenders in the AFC West, which had 3 teams go to the playoffs and 1 went to the Super Bowl? Smith answers the big question on at quarterback, but there's still work to do. Running back, what are they going to do there? They finished last in rushing, 79.8 yards per game in 2024. They could take Ashton Jenny in the draft at number 6. He's probably the best running back in the draft. They need another playmaker, I think. Bowers and Myers are solid options, but they still need a number 1 wide receiver, I think. Through free agency, there aren't none left, I don't think. The Cooper Kupp's gone. Or a trade, maybe Brandon Ayuk from San Francisco, but I'm pretty sure San Francisco doesn't want Ayuk to stay in the division, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. How does getting Smith change the draft strategy? The Raiders might have thought they were going to draft a quarterback. They draft really high here in the top 5, but now I don't think that's going to be the choice. So now they can go with the best player available, like they did last year when they picked up Bowers. That worked out pretty well, and that would be either the running back I just mentioned, Ginty, or maybe defensive end Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M, or an offensive lineman, Will Campbell from LSU.
Well, I think right now Geno Smith is an interesting option because it's kind of the opposite of what I said about the Sam Darnold one. The Raiders last year had no quarterback because they bounced from Gardner Minshew to Aiden O'Connell, back to Gardner Minshew to Aiden O'Connell to a little bit of Desmond Ridder. You never want those 3 quarterbacks anywhere on a field to be your surefire number 1 quarterback. You may put them in for a game or 2, depending on if your quarterback gets hurt, but you never want them to be your quarterback 1. I said last year, the fact that Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell are fighting for quarterback 1 spot, that right there is an issue. And so that's why I said at the time the Raiders will be a bottom 3 team in the NFL. And I was basically right, because they were a garbage team in a large part of the season last year. I said they had no running game and people had an issue with that. Well, they turned out to have legitimately the worst rushing attack in the NFL. I said their defense was overrated. Some injuries here and there, but regardless, they had one really good defensive game against the Baltimore Ravens early, and that's what led them to get that win in week 2. But in totality, they had issues on the back seven of their team. So I decided to look at the numbers again. I decided to look at their roster again because it's time to bring out the predictions. It's time to bring out the rankings that people seem to deny, but this is the proof. You have to take a look at what your roster is compared to the rest of the NFL. There's not a lot of, being like, well, maybe this team is a little... No, these are legitimate facts. Their wide receiver core, as it ranks today, I understand, draft and free agency. It's not over. The draft still needs to come about, and they may draft someone at number 6. Who knows? T-Mac, I'm sure, will be a perfectly fine option for them. But as it currently ranks, the wide receiver core, 31st. Running back core, bottom 3. Offensive line, 17th. Cornerback ranking, last. Safety ranking, 26th. Brock Bowers, right? People were like, but Brock Bowers, he's going to be so good. Top tight end in the draft. He was tremendous. And that's why I said on the read for this topic that, in my opinion, he was the best tight end last year in the NFL. That's not really a hot take, I don't think. But it doesn't matter. You didn't have a quarterback. Geno Smith brings some stability. Where you didn't have any stability, Geno Smith brings that. And I also saw that Dan Orlovsky was talking about how they're going to run play action more because of Chip Kelly. Well, in order to run an effective play action, you need to have an effective running game. That's the only way play action works. That's why the Eagles operated so effectively on both stages of offense. Because Saquon Barkley was a 2,000-yard rusher, and also you had wideouts like Smith and like Brown, along with your tight end being Dallas Goedert, who, by the way, they're open to trading right now. I think that's a mistake. Last year, the Raiders' rushing ranks, they were dead last in success percentage. Rushing EPA was 31st. Explosive runs was 31st. Rushing yards per game were dead last. Rush yards per play were dead last. And rushing touchdowns was ranked 28th. You also ran play action one of the fewest times in the NFL. So the only way that you're going to run play action effectively and actually make teams fall for your play action is if you have an effective running game. Raheem Mostert is a great touchdown guy, but can he get those explosive runs that make a running game lethal? I don't think so. I don't think you're going to rely on Sasir McCormick or Zamir White to be your true running back, your powerhouse running backs there, because nobody's going to fear him. You don't have a top running back. You let Josh Jacobs go last year. You decided to get off him for some reason, and you thought you can go into the season with Zamir White and Alexander Madison. What are you thinking?
That was a huge mistake.
But that was Antonio Pierce's team. That was Tom Telesco, who, very bad GM. That's why he got off it. Now you got Spytek. Now you got Pete Carroll. The defense should be better. It was about middle of the pack last year. You have some stability at quarterback, but you got to get a better running game. Upgrade with another wide receiver. I thought Cooper Kupp might be an option. You still have Stephon Diggs out there. You still have Tyler Lockett, who may team up with Geno Smith. Just played with him last year. You have options there. But in totality, does Geno Smith change the outlook of the Raiders? I would say a little bit, because you have a stable quarterback. Can this team win 7-8 games next year? Wouldn't surprise me. Are they going to go win the division next year?
No, I doubt
Not
it.
even close to it.
Yeah. That's a tough division to be in, man.
It's probably the best coached division in the NFL.
I mean, look at the teams in the division.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think it is the best coach because you have Pete Carroll, Super Bowl winning head coach, Andy Reid, a multi-time Super Bowl winning head coach, Jim Harbaugh, who wins everywhere he goes and made a Super Bowl already with the San Francisco 49ers, and then, why am I forgetting one? Oh, and then Sean Payton, a Super Bowl winning head coach who just made the playoffs with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
So that's probably the best coach division.
You got to believe the Chargers are going to be better, even better this year coming, right?
I have my doubts.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about the Chargers at some point, but I do have my doubts on them. But as it currently stands, they change a little bit. They go from my opinion being they're a bottom 3 team in the NFL to saying they're below average and not going to make much noise in the grand scheme of things. Because you look at the AFC and you try to find a hole in the AFC. You know what? Let's go through the teams right now because some people are going to be like, well, they're going to be a 500 team, and that's what people said last year. Let's go down right now. Will they beat out Buffalo for a? Let's just.
You're talking about
making the playoffs.
The Raiders.
The Raiders, yeah,
okay.
the Raiders.
Yeah.
Will they? I know this is obviously the Bills are either going to be a wild card team or a division team, but let's just go through it. The Buffalo Bills, better or worse?
This year,
this upcoming season,
I think they'll be better. You
think that the Las Vegas Raiders are going to be better than the Buffalo Bills?
No. They won't be as good as Buffalo.
Yeah, that's
sure.
what I'm saying. Are the Raiders better than X?
Oh, no.
Miami Dolphins.
Maybe.
Maybe. Baltimore Ravens.
No.
Pittsburgh.
No.
Cincy.
No.
Houston.
Maybe. I don't. I'd say maybe yes on that one.
Jacksonville.
Yes.
Kansas City.
No.
The Chargers. You just said the Chargers are going to be better, and they went 11 and 6.
So I'd say no.
And then Denver.
No.
So so based on what you said, they would have to sneak in as a 7 seed.
Yeah.
That's the only way they make it to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And maybe not, because if you're saying they're not better than Cincy, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore, all three of those teams could make the playoffs, and then you have basically no shot.
Yeah.
You need to sneak in as the 7 seed. So I think they're a playoff team. They're moving in the right direction.
I think they'd be smart to pick up Tyler Lockett.
That might be a good option. I also think that you should also look at a quarterback in the draft, whether that's Will Howard, Gabriel.
I think once you get beyond the first two, I don't know. I mean, it's not going to be able to play. Geno Smith is there probably for 3 years, I would think.
At $45 million a year or more? You really think Tom Brady's going to be like, he's seen a lot of winning. He's seen everything. And he thinks that Geno Smith's going to go in there. You're going to sign into a 3-year deal, $130 million, and be like, you know what? Sure. We'll give you all this money. Do you deserve it? It's probably
So
more
you
than
think he's on a 1-year deal at $25 million and they wait and see?
I think this should be a prove-it year. I really do.
I don't know.
I know every report's saying he's probably going to sign a long-term deal. My question is why? You're in a very tough division. You need an X factor. Geno Smith ain't your X factor. And giving him a bunch of money when you still need to build up your team is a bad idea.
Yeah.
You got to save some money, build up your roster to make it at least feasible in your own division, let alone your own conference if you make the playoffs.
Well, he averaged more than 4,200 yards a season under Pete Carroll.
Yeah, but he also had what? He averaged 20 with his time with the Seahawks as the full-time starter. He averaged 24 touchdowns, 12 picks. Mm-hmm. That's not great. It's good, but not great.
He doesn't have the receiver core that he had with the Seahawks.
That's
right?
true. That's true.
So that could be an issue.
And now I think, honestly, the Seahawks, you could argue, have a better wide receiver core. Tight end does not include wide receiver core, not receiving core, wide receiver core in the Seattle Seahawks than the Las Vegas Raiders do. Because the Raiders, their best wide receiver is Jacoby Myers.
Well, Bowers.
That's why I said wide receiver core.
Okay, wide receiver.
I'm wide receivers only. I understand.
Yeah,
I'm obviously going to take Brock Bowers over Noah Fant 10 times out of 10. But Jacoby Myers versus either Cooper Kupp or JSN. You could argue JSN's better than Jacoby Myers. And then Trey Tucker versus Cooper Kupp. I'd probably give it to Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
So do with that what you will, Raiders fans. I'll be happy to debate you later on in the season after the draft on where they place.
So we don't hold out a whole lot of hope for the Raiders this year, then.
No, they're going to be better than 4-13.
Yeah.
I think they could double their wins.
Okay.
I truly think they could. I was right with the Denver Broncos doubling their wins last year. Or nearly doing that. All right, let's get into our next topic here. DK Metcalf, also another Seahawk that got traded away, this time to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He got traded for a 2025 second-round pick. Now, what's fascinating is that he was fully aware that they currently don't have a quarterback. However, supposedly, it sounds like Metcalf was led to believe that that key piece will soon be added. He spoke to the media on Thursday about his decision to commit to the Steelers long-term, and he said that he had no concerns about Pittsburgh's quarterback situation following conversations that he had with Mike Tomlin, owner Art Rooney, and general manager Omar Khan. Because currently their quarterback one is Mason Rudolph.
Yep.
Not a great quarterback to be throwing it to after you just had Geno Smith and Russell Wilson. So my question to you is, do you think that this overall was a good trade for DK Metcalf, who, by the way, inked a 5-year, $150 million deal on day one? So
not bad.
Not bad at all.
Not bad at all. Yeah, I think it was a good trade. It's a good trade for Pittsburgh, and it's a good trade for Metcalf. Metcalf got a lot of money. Pittsburgh got an elite wide receiver. He's the dynamic receiving threat. Also gives him plenty of leverage and flexibility when it comes to George Pickens, who is set to enter his final year of his rookie deal. And they need to get into his head. Now, maybe DK Metcalf will be a good influence on him. They can look at themselves as, the 1-2 punch for the for the Steelers, and maybe that gets Pickens' head on straight. I think the Steelers generally are known for being bargain spenders during free agency. They made a complete about-face here when they traded the second-round pick to Seattle for Metcalf. In addition, he's going to get, as you mentioned, a 5-year, $150 million deal, making him one of the highest-paid receivers in the NFL. The Pittsburgh was finally had acquired a coveted, accomplished veteran, a wide receiver who will be paired with Pickens. They made sure they didn't miss out like last year. They wanted to get an elite wide receiver last year, and they were all gone by the time they tried to figure out what they were going to do. So they didn't let that happen this year. They jumped right in and got him. He's only 27 years old. He's one of the NFL's top playmakers. During his 6 years in Seattle, he caught 48 TDs, which is tied for fifth most in the league over that span. He had 3 1,000-plus yard seasons and averaged 14.4 yards per catch. The risks are, receivers as big as him are prone to having injuries as they get older. Will he ask for a trade again? He asked for a trade to get out of Seattle. What if they don't bring in a quarterback? What if the quarterback is subpar and doesn't get him the ball a lot? Who knows? He might ask for a trade again. That's a risk. But I think these risks are well worth taking. It shows its commitment to the fan base, and after losing 5 straight to end the 24 season, they needed to do something, and I think this was a statement move, as it is the first time the Steelers have made a trade like this. Steelers are trying to be good, but they've been trying to be good, but they haven't been good enough, and maybe this helps get them over the hump. They want to take advantage of the final prime years of Haywood, Watt, and Fitzpatrick now. So I think having both Pickens and Metcalf is good. Is a good step in the right direction there. It's also an enticement to the remaining free agent quarterbacks that can be signed, either Wilson or Rodgers. Again, I think Aaron Rodgers, even if it was less money, the Steelers are trying to get him to come. I think that's where he ought to go. I think Wilson has the upper hand actually here, and for the reasons I mentioned in the first topic we discussed. He played with Metcalf for 3 seasons in Seattle. Metcalf's best seasons came with Wilson throwing him the ball. The Steelers still have a lot of work to do there ahead of them to build a roster that will fix the one and done problem they've had in the playoffs, losing 6 straight. But this is a great start, I think.
I think overall that this is a good move if you had an actual quarterback. And I know DK says that, he's confident the Steelers will. He has no issue with what the Steelers are doing right now because he was supposedly, he had no concerns about what the quarterback situation will be. My guess is because he was told by either Mike Tomlin or Rooney or Omar Khan that they were going to focus on Aaron Rodgers. So that's probably it. I don't think that he was enticed to be reuniting with Russell Wilson. I don't think Russell Wilson, like I said earlier on in the show, I don't think he's going back to Pittsburgh. I don't think Pittsburgh even wants him back. But I do find it interesting how the Steelers always try to find a way to sign, to draft, and develop disgruntled receivers. Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, DK Metcalf. We've always heard about receivers crashing out on the field, and we now have seen Deontay Johnson and George Pickens both have these incidents on the field that have massive implications in locker rooms. We saw how disgruntled George Pickens was at the end of last year when he said, "Did you see improvement?" He said, "Yeah." "Do you have any hope for the future?" He went, "Nah." Well, that's a bit of an issue there because Russell Wilson, some people will say, had a good year, and you weren't really happy with it. And now you have no quarterback, and you have a receiver who demands 100 targets every single season of his career. So that might have problems because we've already seen it have problems when Deontay Johnson was a big part of the offense and the primary receiver of the offense, and there were some issues with that. George Pickens had problems with that. And then the Steelers decided to ship Deontay Johnson away. So truthfully, let's just say, Aaron Rodgers goes over to Pittsburgh Steelers. Are we sure that's a great combination? Because we just saw Aaron Rodgers go to the New York Jets. Let's take out the injury season because he played 4 plays, so I'm not even counting it. Let's say he went to the Jets. He had Mike Williams, complained about Mike Williams not going a little bit to the right because he's supposed to be in a certain zone, he said. And then a couple weeks later, Mike Williams was shipped out of there and then eventually ended up in Pittsburgh, which is kind of ironic. So Aaron Rodgers, and let's say DK Metcalf has an on-the-field incident, or George Pickens, we've seen him give up on plays, just flat out walk on the field while a play's going on, not really caring. What happens when Aaron Rodgers in the post-game conference sort of does the subtle jab at a teammate? We're not sure exactly who it is because Rodgers never spoke it, but we could look at the film and be like, okay, he was talking about George Pickens just not blocking or not running the right route or not putting enough energy into the route. Are we sure that this is a match made in heaven for all parties? They're all incredibly talented. Aaron Rodgers is a first ballot Hall of Famer. George Pickens is a tremendous wide receiver. DK Metcalf is also an insane talent. But are we sure that this is going to work when it comes to personalities? And your head coach is Mike Tomlin, who is a no BS guy. I have my concerns when it comes to that. Do I think that just on paper, just like the Chargers were on paper a tremendous defense, the Pittsburgh Steelers on paper, when you look at Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, and George Pickens, could they be a good team? Absolutely. But I'm going based off history, and I'm going to say, well, in the grand scheme of things, if they do get Aaron Rodgers, if they already have DK Metcalf and George Pickens, who says that they're going to even win a playoff game? Because I still would put a bunch of teams over the Pittsburgh Steelers if they ever do make the playoffs. I'd put Cincy. I'd put Baltimore. I'd put Buffalo. I would put Kansas City. I'd put the Chargers. I may even put Denver, depending on how Bo Nix's year 2 goes, with also the addition of Dre Greenlaw and Hufanga on top of the number 1 defense last year. And I'm sure they're going to be adding talent as we go through the offseason. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Broncos, they go from 10-7 to being even a better team than last year.
Mm-hmm.
But we have too many personalities. We have George Pickens crash outs. We have DK Metcalf crash outs. We got Aaron Rodgers passive aggressiveness. And then on top of it, we got Mike Tomlin's no BS thing. There's way too much potential conflict here.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Mike Tomlin's no BS wins out, and he's not going to stand.
It doesn't stop George Pickens.
It's not going to. Well,
didn't stop Deontay.
There's too much. There's been a lot of noise about that. They're going to address that. They addressed part of it.
Why wait this late, though?
They addressed part of it by bringing Metcalf in, and that takes a little wind out of George Pickens' sails. He's going to have to step up and show that he really is an elite wide receiver. And maybe that helped keep his mouth closed. So, I don't know. Who do you think the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback should be?
I think it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're going to do something stupid, think they have the answer at quarterback, and it's not going to matter in the end. Like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if Mason Rudolph becomes the quarterback 1, if Russ signs with the Browns, and then Aaron Rodgers decides to stay in New York and sign with the Giants. They'd be stuck.
They wouldn't have a choice.
They'd be stuck, which, again, isn't surprising because they were just stuck with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, and before that they were stuck with Kenny Pickett, and before that they were stuck with, shockingly, also with a hint of Mason Rudolph and an aged Big Ben that was about 2 years from being good.
Yeah.
But they decided to stick with him.
Yeah.
And they also draft 21st, which means that, again, we're going to talk about this draft. Let's just say the Browns get Russ and the Giants get Aaron Rodgers. Then the plan fits perfectly, unless we see a Michael Penix Falcons
Well, then I would say you've already upset DK Metcalf before he even this is even the first snap. They told him, "Don't worry, we're going to have a quarterback that will get you the ball."
You think he'd be upset if he got Shedeur Sanders at quarterback and he slid all the way to 21st and they got him?
You said that in the last show, and that ain't going to happen.
Hold on. I just laid out the groundwork for you. If Russell Wilson goes to the Browns, Rodgers goes to the Giants. They have Mason Rudolph. Unless we see a Michael Penix move from either the Cardinals, the Cowboys, or whatever. If we go with only quarterback needy
Michael
teams,
Penix?
A Michael Penix-like move.
Oh.
Because the Falcons had Kirk Cousins in the offseason and then a couple months later drafted Michael Penix. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is, if the Browns get Russ, so they have their quarterback 1 and they already have 2 quarterbacks in the backup, and 3 quarterbacks if you had Deshaun Watson. The Giants already have Aaron Rodgers, along with Tommy Cutlets. So all the quarterback-needy teams are gone besides the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nobody else needs a quarterback besides the Steelers at 21. So
but no one's going to look at Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson as the future.
But why?
So they're going to be. I think the Browns
play 2 more years.
I think the Browns are going to draft a quarterback, and I'm not sure what Tennessee's going to do. The Giants are going to draft a quarterback.
Deshaun Watson come back next year. You have Russell Wilson for this year.
Because Deshaun Watson is dead money. He's washed up. I don't think they're going to.
Then they would have gotten off him last year. They would have traded him last year.
But nobody who would want him. That was a huge mistake. They just got to put it behind them. They've got to think about the future.
Why didn't they just cut him?
They have to think about the future.
Why wouldn't they just cut him?
Well, maybe they will. Why didn't they do it last year? I don't know.
The cap was very,
I think
very
they thought he still had, he might still be good.
If that's the case, then everybody in the front office of the Cleveland Browns should be fired on the spot.
Well, that might be the right solution.
Because they literally had, statistically, the worst offense in 100 years.
In 100 years?
In NFL history, they're one of the least efficient offenses in NFL history.
Oh, yeah? Huh.
So if you couldn't see that by week 4, I'm concerned. I mean, week 1 it was bad against the Cowboys, and the Cowboys didn't play particularly great. Dak Prescott didn't play well in week 1 against them. So, I mean, if nobody else could see that, and the entire media world is saying this is a bad trade, and now on top of it, Myles Garrett requested a trade because he thought you couldn't win a Super Bowl, why not cut bait now? Why say, well, now Deshaun Watson's banged up with an Achilles. No one's going to want him for a year. We're going to take on dead cap anyway. The Broncos did it, and they made the playoffs the following year. Actually, that year that they got off him.
Yeah.
So if you think by the way, first of all, they already have 3 quarterbacks on. They have 2 quarterbacks on their roster right now. If you don't include Deshaun Watson. If
I were Pittsburgh, I'd be a little worried right now.
I would be as well.
You just drafted Metcalf, told him, don't worry, we'll have a quarterback that is going to help us get to the Super Bowl. And did anyone think that would be Mason Rudolph? I don't think so. The Giants are probably going to take Rodgers, and the Browns will probably take Russ. So that leaves the Pittsburgh alone at the altar. They're going to wind up with Mason Rudolph.
As they normally are.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but coming up, there's a little bit of feud between former teammates. Demarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons going at it after Lawrence made some comments about the Dallas Cowboys, as well as what will Aaron Rodgers do? The saga continues. We'll be checking Aaron Rodgers news throughout the week, but as of right now, he has not selected a team and he is waiting. We're going to talk about what team will most likely pick him up right after this break.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast, your food podcast, your mindfulness podcast, your never thought you'd get this far podcast, and those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the content.
Drop the episode where people and find out who they're cooking with, where they're finding inner balance, and they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk for the world's.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name is Nathan Harvey. It's great to have you in today on a Friday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic of tonight's show, which is an interesting one because it looks like, yikes, new Seattle Seahawks edge rusher Demarcus Lawrence hasn't exactly had a peaceful exit from the Dallas Cowboys since officially signing with Seattle on Thursday. Following a series of comments in an interview with Seattle Seahawks blogger Brian Nemhauser, the former 2014 second-round pick had something to say, and this was his quote that led to a bit of a scuffle on Twitter. Take a listen to what Demarcus Lawrence had to say.
Definitely love the atmosphere. Change the scenery is always good, but, Dallas is my home. I made my home there. My family lives there. I'm forever going to be there, but, I know for sure I'm not going to win a Super Bowl there. So, yeah. We here.
So that led to that's Aaron Rodgers. We don't want to quote that. Here we go. That led to a bit of a Twitter scuffle between the two of them, with Micah Parsons responding, this what rejection and envy look like? That's some clown bleep. With then Demarcus Lawrence following up with a comment saying, calling me a clown won't change the fact that I told the truth. Maybe if you spent less time tweeting and more time winning, I wouldn't have left. Yikes.
Pretty tough, man.
So here's my question to you. First of all, what's your reaction? And on top of that, do either one of these guys, pick a side, do either one of these guys have a point in what they said?
I thought these guys were friends. I mean, they played together for 4 years, and they had some success together. So I thought they were friends. But, after 11 years with the Cowboys, Demarcus Lawrence chose to sign a 3-year deal worth $32.5 million with the Seattle Seahawks. I guess that says it all. And it's a little surprising after Lawrence said he would like to stay with the Cowboys before free agency. He said, the ball is in their court. I'm not only going to play in Dallas, I'm going to have other options, but I'd like to stay here. It would be a glorious thing. That's what he said. And that now he's saying, he left it for Seattle. He's saying, hey, I was never going to win a Super Bowl there. And then the wild comment coming back from Parsons. And then Lawrence hitting back with calling me a clown won't change the fact that I told the truth. Maybe if you spent less time tweeting and more time winning, I wouldn't have left, as you showed there. That's pretty tough stuff. Parsons is big on social media and does have a podcast during the season for the Bleacher Report. Maybe there is something to that. Maybe he's distracted by it. I just think the response from Parsons, Lawrence's teammate for 4 years and fellow pass rusher, was quick and surprising, and the follow-on response from Lawrence just shows me these guys don't care for one another. The Cowboys were not going to match the Seahawks offer, which included $18 million guaranteed and could peak at $42 million with incentives and escalators. Lawrence counts 7.445 against the Cowboys cap in 2025. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler, selected in the second round of the 2014 draft. He's had 61.5 sacks with the Cowboys. I always knew there was more left in me, he said, just thinking and wanting a Super Bowl. It doesn't all come together if all the pieces ain't there. For me, to have another opportunity to go and chase my dream to win a Super Bowl with a good team and all the pieces are in place, I need to take my opportunity. He thinks all the pieces are in place in Seattle? I'm not so sure, DeMarcus. You may be disappointed there and how that goes. Interestingly, and probably best for both teams, the Seahawks and Cowboys don't meet in 2025 regular season.
I believe it's 2026 when they face off again. I'm on the side of Demarcus Lawrence here because I think he's right. He wasn't going to win a Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys. In fact, you could look at every player over the last 30 years and say, guess what? I don't care how good you think this team is. You're not going to win a Super Bowl on this current Dallas Cowboys team. And you'd be right every single year for longer than I've been alive, and then some. So I think it's interesting how Micah Parsons has an issue with this. Who didn't show up in several playoff games the past couple of years? Micah Parsons. And we could say Demarcus Lawrence, he's had some up and down years since signing a big contract, but this season before he got hurt and put on IR, he had 3 sacks in 4 games. So his production this year looked good. Now, we don't know how his production would have maybe dipped later on in the season, but he started off the season doing very, very well on a defense that I might add that wasn't great all around. They couldn't stop the run for the life of them. But I think in total, I think Demarcus Lawrence is right in this situation. Micah Parsons, he does his Bleacher Report podcast. That's what he does. He's made some interesting, quotes. He's a big podcast guy now. Always has a comment, which I think is cool. We get a little insight on what the players think, what their point of view is, what their perspective is on their own team, giving, literally direct quotes instead of these, a source said so-and-so. We can hear it directly from them, kind of like Cooper Kupp did this offseason when he told the world that the Rams are going to get off him. But I think in total, I think he's right. Cowboys aren't going to win a Super Bowl. I don't think they're going to win one anytime soon. You have Dak Prescott on an average $60 million a year contract. You right now have no legit running game. Javonte Williams isn't going to do anything for you. Your offensive line is old, some that are already retired, some that aren't even good. You have only one true threat in CeeDee Lamb. Your defense isn't great. You just lost a starting cornerback in Lewis. You don't really have a lot of pieces in play to make massive impacts. Now, you got someone today, and I think it's the Fowler I think you got back. That's a fine piece. Fine piece. But I think in total, it's not going to change anything. He's not going to fill into the role that Lawrence had for you. And I think right now, Demarcus Lawrence is a perfectly serviceable defender. He had a bunch of sacks. Now, they're not double-digit sacks. But the last, 6 years, he's had 27.5 sacks. That's not terrible. Is that what you want? Maybe, maybe not, depending on, if you think he's an uberly good player.
You worry
but 27.5 sacks is not bad.
You worry about him missing 13 games last year with the Lisfranc injury in his right foot?
That's a very weird injury. You don't see that often. So I think he's going to go to Seattle, who, by the way, already has Williams. They have a couple decent pass rushers. But I think the ironic part of all of this is he's not going to win, like you said, he's not going to win a Super Bowl in Seattle either.
Yeah.
That's just funny.
He sounds like he thinks he's going to.
Right.
But,
I don't think he is, though. And
it'll be a very big surprise to everybody if Seattle wins the Super Bowl in the next 3 years.
I agree.
I think that'd be a huge surprise.
But I completely agree with them. I think the Cowboys are not going to win. The only issue is, the funny thing is, the ironic thing is, to make him feel like a little bit of a hypocrite, is that he's not going to win with Seattle anyway. Most likely. I know we've had some Cinderella stories. The Commanders with a rookie quarterback nearly made the Super Bowl. But Sam Darnold, in his only playoff game of his career, put up a massive dud of a performance. And now he's going to a team that had a worse offensive line. They just added Cooper Kupp, but some people may think he's washed.
Don't have the wide receiver core either.
And on top of that, regardless, even though you got Cooper Kupp, his injury history says he may not be around for 17 games.
Yeah.
So there's
that stat you showed of him dropping in the
15th to 71st,
creating space. That's terrible.
No, it's bad. He's decreased year after year after year, and also his yards after the catch per reception, that also has gone down pretty drastically. So I think in total, I don't think this is really gonna. It's funny just to look at former teammates battling out against one another. I also think, like I said, it's very ironic that you're calling out the Cowboys for not winning a Super Bowl, but the Seahawks are probably not going to win one. But I agree with the point that the Cowboys aren't going to win one. That's for damn sure. And I don't know if podcasting's really hurting Micah that much. I just think the team isn't great. Does he not show up in the playoffs? Yes. But I think in total.
Did the Cowboys have one of the worst defenses against the run last year? Yes.
But I'll get this. Did they improve? Also, yes.
I was surprised that they let the running back go, Rico
Dowdle.
Yeah, he's gone.
I think he's on the Panthers.
Yeah, he's gone to the Panthers on a 1-year deal for like $3 million.
That's Jerry Jones for you.
Yeah.
No, but don't worry, they got Javonte Williams.
I would have thought they'd hung on to him. He improved throughout the season, right? He was getting over 100 yards a game there after a while. I would have thought they would have hung on to him, but $3 million? Come on.
Oh, and they also got Miles Sanders today, which again.
Yeah.
He had one decent year with the Eagles. Went to the Panthers. Didn't really do much. And now he's on the Cowboys, and most likely isn't going to do much anyway. Because according to ESPN, he's behind Javonte Williams, who also didn't have a great season with the Denver Broncos and got benched for backup and third-string running backs.
Yeah.
Not a great look.
Yeah. Looks like the Cowboys' running game is really suspect.
As it was last year. Let's get to our final topic of today's show, which is, again, we're talking Aaron Rodgers. And I want to show this picture before I actually read the rundown. Daily Mail took this picture here of Aaron Rodgers on the beach. He's not in a darkness retreat. He's in a robe, in a bathing suit on the beach, contemplating life.
He doesn't look very happy.
He seems like he's in that Aaron Rodgers type of zone, that Zen ayahuasca zone maybe. Who knows? But, he's mulling a big decision because earlier this offseason, the New York Jets made a tough decision to let Aaron Rodgers go. He will be a post-June 1st release, which saves the Jets a little bit to stretch the cap over 2 years instead of dealing with just 1 year. But now it looks like 3 teams. We know about 2 teams. 3 teams now are reportedly at least interested in landing the 41-year-old quarterback, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the New York Giants, and a newcomer. Although, are they really a newcomer? If you look at history, the Minnesota Vikings are also potentially interested, with Diana Rossini posting on Twitter/X. Here's what you need to know. The Vikings are having discussions about what they want to do at quarterback and if they want Rodgers. Rodgers is giving them time and waiting to hear from Minnesota. The Vikings have yet to make a decision. We all wait. Now, what we heard initially was that the Giants and the Steelers have offers to Aaron Rodgers, and they're waiting for Rodgers to respond. Now, Diana Rossini is reporting that Rodgers is waiting on the Vikings to see what they do with their quarterback situation. So right now we're in a triangle of just waiting.
Yeah.
With the catalyst being this man, Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers.
Here's my question to you. Do you think Rodgers, first of all, what team do you think Aaron Rodgers will go to, and do you think Rodgers could still be a top quarterback in the NFL?
Well, the options are much smaller now that the other quarterbacks have all signed except Russell Wilson. Darnold went to the Seahawks. Smith went to the Raiders. In a trade, Stafford went back to the Rams. Jones signed with the Colts, and Fields signed with the Jets. There isn't many homes left. As you said, it's a triangle. It's the Browns, the Giants, and now the Vikings with an interest. Most probably
Steelers, not the Browns.
Steelers, I'm sorry.
That's Russ.
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. I got that wrong. Most probably Pittsburgh, I think, or the Giants. But as you say, Minnesota is a possibility. I would say the Giants should be last on his list, even though he has a home in New York. They've got very questionable offense. Only one star on offensive player is Neighbors, who's only in his second year. Big questions about the offensive line. Next would be the Vikings, I think, who have an elite wide receiver in Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson. He also knows the division. However, he risks being like at the Giants. He'd risk being a bridge quarterback or not starting at all if McCarthy shines in the preseason or the Vikings get off to a bad start. I think Pittsburgh will go back to Wilson, partly because of the Metcalf connection. We just talked about that. Interestingly, both Sauce Gardner, who said Rodgers could lead the NFL in all quarterback stats if he went to the Vikings, and Brett Favre, who said Rodgers should end his career like he did in Minnesota. By all means, Brett said, sign with the Vikings. They have a really good football team. They're loaded pretty much at every position. So I think the odds favor the Giants, but who knows? We'll have to wait and see.
I think technically the odds actually favor Pittsburgh because now they are the second highest bet team to win the Super Bowl. Because everybody expects Aaron Rodgers to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which then you want to cash in on the early bets before Rodgers actually goes there, and obviously the odds would most likely decrease, so you win less money if they ever do win the Super Bowl with Rodgers there, at least this upcoming season. I think when it comes down to it, to answer the question, no, never, not likely to happen, because Rodgers, out of 44 quarterbacks, the last 2 years that he's played, but since 2022, minimum 500 pass attempts. Like I said, out of 44 quarterbacks, these were Rodgers' numbers. His record was 31st. Completion percentage, 27th. Passing yards a game, 23rd. Touchdown interception ratio, that I believe, has the highest amongst qualified quarterbacks. I think it's nearly a 4 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio. He's 19th. Not great. Out of 44, it's a little bit above average, and the passer rating is about average at 23, So Rodgers is a average to below average quarterback since his MVP season. And there were a lot of expectations for Rodgers on the Jets. For instance, we had them winning the division last year. We have to be honest when we talk about that because that's what we do. We're honest here. We live up to our mistakes. We've had some very bad picks, including myself. But yeah, we both picked the Jets to make the playoffs and at least do decently last season, and then what that ultimately came to being was a 5-12 record, and the Jets look horrible with Rodgers at the helm, leading them to a brick wall, getting their GM fired, head coach fired, offensive coordinator fired. So that's where the Jets stood, and that's where the Packers, his final year with them, they were 8-9, missed the playoffs, lost to the Detroit Lions in the last week. Rodgers put up a big dud. 4 out of the last 5 games. The only reason why the Packers were even in playoff contention was their defense stepped up massively, and their running game was incredible. So I don't think Rodgers will be a top quarterback anywhere he goes. However, can he pull a Sam Darnold and just go along with the ride and be efficient? Yeah, I actually do think so. And honestly, I know Brett Favre hasn't had, a great reputation over the past couple years. I actually agree with him. 100%. I don't think that's a hot take whatsoever. The Giants have no offensive line, one true weapon on offense, no running game. Their defensive line is good. Their cornerbacks improved in the offseason. Linebacker group I don't love, but they're not going to be a great team. They're not going to be a team that's going to be fighting for the NFC East. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they're in arguably the toughest division in the NFL with Cincinnati and Baltimore. That's pretty damn tough. And you could argue that going over to Minnesota gives you a pretty good shot because Detroit just hit the big reset button on their coaching staff. Green Bay is super young, and then Chicago got a little bit better. So they might be beating each other up and giving themselves more losses than they did last year. So with Minnesota going 14-3, having Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, a healthy offensive line again, Aaron Jones is back, and the defense I think is going to remain largely the same. Why not? Why not just do the full circle of Brett Favre's career where you play one true year with the New York Jets after coming from the Packers for a number of seasons, and then you play, by the way, Rodgers wants to play at least a couple more seasons. How many seasons did Brett Favre play with the Minnesota Vikings? 2 seasons.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
So this could be a full circle of back-to-back Packers quarterbacks having the exact same timeline.
It's really kind of strange when you think about it that would happen, right?
All we need now is Jordan Love to do the exact same thing in about 10 years from now.
Yeah. So I was looking at your picture that you've got down there, Rodgers roster roulette, and I was looking at Rodgers in the various uniforms. Which uniform do you think he looks best in, and what number would he wear at each of these franchises?
Well, I right now I think number 8 of the New York Giants is cursed because that's what Daniel Jones wore.
Yeah, I don't think he would wear that. I think he'd go back to number 12.
You think he would go number 12?
Yeah.
Well, he can't do that if he's with Pittsburgh.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, he can't have
He'd
12
probably
there.
stick with number 8.
Yeah. I don't think he'll stick with 8. He had pretty bad luck with that.
But that's his college number, so
Yeah.
do you think he's going to give that up?
I don't know. He could go to 12 in Minnesota.
Well, technically, the Pittsburgh Steelers never retired Teddy Bradshaw's number.
I don't think
he could wear 12.
I don't think he would pick 12 if he went there.
He could pick. It's
could,
Aaron
but
Rodgers.
maybe start a controversy on day one. Show up with number 12 wearing number 12. I think that would be that would set off a controversy.
Maybe
he could wear 12 at the Giants. He could wear 12 at the Vikings.
That's true.
So I think he should stay away from 8. He had pretty bad luck with that in the NFL. It might have been good for him in college, but not so good in the NFL, that's for sure.
I think that best uniform, I think he actually looks good in that Vikings uniform, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think he doesn't look too bad.
I think he looks okay in the Giants uniform, too. He looks a little odd with that black helmet on, the Pittsburgh.
I mean, does he not look awkward in this photo from the Daily Mail? He's in black there.
It looks like he'd been up all night partying or something, right? He looks lost. He looks lost, and apparently he's cold.
Thought.
Apparently he's cold.
I mean, yeah, that's probably what, sunrise, sunset?
Where is he? Do you know? Where is he?
What, Malibu in California, maybe? I don't know.
Would you need a blanket out there?
It's cold. By the ocean when it's cold. When it's
early in the morning. Well, he's got short
sunrise.
pants on and no shoes.
What, are you going to pull sweatpants on a beach? Hell no.
If you got a blanket on, you might want to.
I mean, right? No, so Rodgers, his most
Where is he going to land? We've got to make our prediction right now. Where is it going to be? We've been all over the place tonight. Where is it going to be? We were hoping it would be defined for us here and determined before the show is over. Has anything come up? We're overtime in the show by almost 15 minutes.
Well, we would have set
Is there
time
any
for the show.
Should we keep the show going until there's a decision?
We may be here for weeks if that was the case, because Rodgers knows the
Let's keep a show going.
Non-stop running show for days upon days upon days. You want to go or should I go for the prediction?
You go first.
If I had to make a prediction of where Aaron Rodgers is going to go, the fact that he's waiting for the Minnesota Vikings and apparently the Vikings aren't confident in J.J. McCarthy already, my question would be, why not bring back Sam Darnold? And I think just the fact that they're thinking about it and Rodgers is waiting for them, and it just makes a lot of sense. And you could also look at Rodgers doesn't need to be the hero in Minnesota because you have so many good pieces around him. Give me Rodgers, and he completes Brett Favre's. He completes the Packers Brett Favre era and finishes his career with the Minnesota Vikings.
I wonder what the money would be. I wonder what the money would be, because the money's going to be best with the Giants, I would think.
They supposedly made an offer that's better than the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
So my guess is the Steelers offered him mid to high 30s or maybe even low 40s.
I think he'd probably like to go back to that division and stick it to the Packers if he could. I think he'd like that. I think that would be something he would like to do.
Brian
You're
Gutekunst
probably right.
them out.
He's waiting for the Vikings. That's where it is right now. He'd love to play there.
Don't just be copying me now.
No, I think you're right. I think I hadn't thought about it this way.
Steelers.
I did. I said Giants too.
You
So
said
I don't know where he's going.
Well, you told me in a pick, so how about you pick?
Yeah, I think no. I'm going to stick with your pick. I think he's waiting for the Vikings. It's up to them. His risk there though is if J.J. McCarthy looks fantastic in the preseason and the Vikings get off to anywhere near a slow start, he risks being a bridge quarterback, and that wouldn't be very good for him. He would not be happy sitting on the bench and mentoring McCarthy for 12 games of the season. Then what would he do the following season? He'd want to be out of there again and looking for something else. Then he's too old. Then I think nobody's going to want him. So it's a risk. There's a risk going to the Vikings. It's a risk. He's got to be. He's got to be overly. One thing. He doesn't lack any confidence for sure. I'm sure he thinks I can beat out J.J. McCarthy, no problem.
Well, that's what you have to have.
Yeah, you got to have that. You got to have supreme confidence in yourself.
I'm sure that's what Russ thinks. I'm sure that's what Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson
ayahuasca retreats. That's what you get. Supreme confidence in yourself.
I don't know if that's confidence.
Yeah.
Liquid courage.
That's what the ayahuasca thing does for you.
Right, but it's just like beer. It's liquid courage or alcohol. Yeah. Liquid courage. It ain't real.
Yeah.
It's a facade.
Yeah. Well.
Although I think Rodgers carries that through his day-to-day life anyway.
Yeah.
Pull
up that picture of him again on the beach. I don't know. I think he'd been out all night there.
Supreme confidence, as you say. Supreme confidence.
He doesn't look supremely confident in that picture to me.
Put that in Titanic. Aaron Rodgers.
We'll see soon. I hope it happens soon. It'll give us something to talk about again.
Aaron Rodgers soon?
Yeah.
Making a decision soon? It took him months or weeks because he was in a darkness retreat. He said he was 90% retired.
I do think here's one thing. When the Jets released him, there was some doubt in my mind whether he would even get a job. Okay?
Rightfully so.
Now I think he will get a job. I'm just not quite sure where it's going to be. I do think he will get a job.
I do find
and I do think he will start the year as a starter.
Yes, absolutely. Because he's not going to. I think it's the same
and
thing.
And we do know that it's probably one of three teams.
He's not going to the Browns. No. Browns are understood. I find it hilarious how the Giants also talk to Joe Flacco. The fact that Joe Flacco has gauged about the same amount of interest as Russell Wilson, that has to tell. There's something with Russ. You're about to be on your fourth team in 4 years or 5 years. And you got kicked. You didn't finish a contract.
Joe Flacco
with the Steelers.
Joe Flacco's going to play until he can't walk, I guess.
He came off the couch and won comeback player of the year and led the Browns to a playoff appearance. And also had he
didn't play very well in that playoff game.
Well, he was 39 years old.
They got beat by Houston.
Yeah. The fact that Joe Flacco is getting about the same amount of nods as Russell Wilson, that has to tell you something about Russ. Which, again, my whole thing, he's not a Hall of Famer. He won a Super Bowl, but so did Nick Foles, Trent Dilfer, Joe Flacco. All these quarterbacks won one Super Bowl. Doesn't make them Hall of Famers? No. Could they play well occasionally? Yeah, sure. Does it make them Hall of Famers? No. Joe Flacco. He was known as his playoff appearances, his playoff games were generally very good. I mean, think about it. He's playing at, 42, 43 years old now? He's still getting looks, still getting jobs, still starting games. Russell Wilson is probably one of the most disliked quarterbacks in the league. Just the fact that he keeps getting kicked off teams and not wanted anymore. And being the backup plan B or C for teams. What does it say about him? Rodgers is the most polarizing quarterback in the NFL. And he has 3 offers, potentially.
I admire Joe Flacco for wanting to stay in there and being competitive and, picking yourself up after you got released by the Ravens when Lamar took your job, and
went to the Jets, started off pretty nicely.
Still hanging in there, and had that year with the Browns, which was kind of a storybook year. And he still thinks he can do it. So more power to him. I don't know whether he'll find a job this year. Probably somewhere. Somebody gets hurt. They'll pick him off the couch again, or maybe he winds up with the Giants. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. I think that's pretty clear. I've been all over the place tonight on this. I'm agreeing with you now. Rodgers to the Vikings. All right.
Here we go. I forgot where I saw it. Well, actually, one thing that's interesting, and I forgot to mention it during the Russell Wilson topic. Myles Garrett supposedly knows who their quarterback's going to be. The Cleveland Browns. Supposedly he knows.
Really?
And that could really, in my mind, only mean
Russ.
Well, two answers. They're drafting one, or it's Russ. Because I don't think he would.
It's probably both.
But why?
No, it's going to be both. They're going to draft a quarterback, Nate. They have the second pick.
You have to realize it's the Cleveland Browns. It's the Cleveland Browns, a team that just spent
It doesn't matter. They're going to continue to make huge mistakes, Nate. They might as well draft a quarterback.
But here's what interesting. That'd be a good choice. That would be a good choice.
Yeah.
That's what
drafting
I'm saying.
a quarterback.
They wouldn't do it because that would be a good choice.
Okay, I see.
Because you have a quarterback that you need to get off of because he's just terrible. Deshaun Watson is garbage. Kenny Pickett's a backup. You trade away DTR for him. You have Bailey Zappi, who threw a pick to a 400-pound defensive lineman, who I think was like the fourth heaviest guy to ever pick off a pass. And if you add Russ to it, Russ is going to be on his fourth team in 5 years. That has to tell you something about Russ. So making that decision would be smart if they draft one. They just gave $40 million per year on average to a player who doesn't want to be there. They gave Deshaun Watson, coming off the scandal in the offseason, the largest guaranteed contract at the time in NFL history.
I told you, I dislike the Browns. On many shows, I've said I think their front office has done a horrible job. But I do think they should draft a quarterback.
That'd be smart.
Yeah,
I don't think they'll do that.
I do think they will do it too. I think they will. They're gonna buck the odds here and do something smart.
I like how the fact that the odds are in favor of them doing something stupid. That if you're a betting person, the favorite would be them doing something stupid.
I think that despite themselves, they're going to get a good player when you draft at number 2.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
Well, unless you draft unless there's just a bust, which there always is in a few of these drafts.
Yeah.
But at number 2, it's hard you're picking either the best or second best guy. So to have a bust at that point is going to be very difficult because let's say the Titans go with Cam Ward. Okay, well, now you have the option of the best pure. You have probably the number one player if you're doing a big board in Abdul Carter if you decide to go that route. You have the best overall player that could be a two-way player in Travis Hunter. Or you can get Shedeur Sanders, who had a bad offensive line and no running game and also put up some decently good numbers with Colorado.
Yeah, I think they would go with Sanders.
At that point, you have 3 very good options.
Why would they go with Carter when they just signed Garrett to a $40 million a year contract?
Again, it's the Cleveland Browns. Yeah. And also, Abdul Carter is just such a freak of nature. So you might that would just be like that would be a pick where you're just picking the top guy.
Yeah, the best player available.
Right.
Yeah.
So also, depending on what happens, you may trade back a pick or two, gain more draft capital. That would not be terrible because then again, you would have Russ. And then maybe next season, if Russ does what I expect Russ to do and be mid to below average, then you can maybe get like an Arch Manning. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I think that wraps it up for today's show. We thank you for the constant support as always. There's probably going to be some more free agent news, offseason news. In a few weeks, about 3 to 4 weeks from now, top 10 picks of the NFL draft. We make our mock draft, so stay tuned for that. We got some things planned for Tuesday's show, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But for this episode of the Harvey Hour, my name is Nathan Harvey. That's my dad, Stephen Harvey. We have been the co-hosts of the Harvey Hour. Catch us Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Have a great weekend. Good night, Grandpa.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.